My brother and his wife willingly stayed blind to what their son was doing, so I opened their eyes in public. When my brother Josh and his wife Katrina found out that their 6-year-old Jake had ODD, they put a plaster on it and called it good. That plaster came in the form of expensive nannies and a crap ton of sedatives to keep Jake essentially a vegetable. I remember they brought Jake over to our house for the first time when he was 8, and that's when the real trouble began. For those who don't know, ODD is essentially a mental disorder that triggers extreme violence without care for consequence. When Jake came over, he wasn't on his sedatives, and he wasted no time going outside and finding a frog to squish in the back garden. I remember my wife telling him that wasn't nice, and he outright slapped her in the face for it. I called his parents immediately, but they didn't answer. They were on a cruise, their phone was off, and Jake was ours for the next 4 days. Those 4 days were the worst of my life, and by the time Jake turned 12, he was a full-blown monster. I'd heard he cornered a classmate at her 10th birthday party and put his hands where they shouldn't go. The little girl ran crying to her parents. They were furious until Jake's parents wrote them a check for $150,000, and they agreed to let it go. Then there was the time Jake took a baseball bat to my truck windshield because I told him he couldn't have the $100 bill in my wallet. Of course, I told his parents, and my brother Josh's response was to send me a check to cover the damages. The breaking point came last Thanksgiving at Josh's house. My wife Kaylee was 5 months pregnant with twins after years of fertility treatments. We'd spent everything we had trying to have children. She asked Jake to wash his hands before dinner, and he screamed, "You're not my mom!" And he shoved her down their marble staircase. I can still hear the sound she made hitting each step. The ambulance took forever. The bleeding wouldn't stop. We lost both boys that night. 2 perfect babies we'd already named and loved, just gone because a 12-year-old threw a tantrum. Josh and Katrina showed up at the hospital with their lawyer immediately. My wife was literally unconscious, hooked to machines, and the first thing they started talking about was how much the bill would cost. Katrina offered to pay it, while Josh told me they'd help pay off our mortgage and give us money for another IVF treatment if we didn't press charges. That's when I knew I had no choice. I had to stop them. I ended up taking the deal as part 1 of my step, because the thing was, they were always honest about money. They were so rich that $50,000 in medical bills and a mortgage for a small house was nothing to them, but it meant everything to me and Kaylee. The second we got the money, my plan went into action. I ended up finding out that Josh and Katrina only took Jake outside with them 4 times per year, and every time it was to their country club's charity galas, where they could pretend to be great parents with a great kid, while their Jake was on enough sedatives to put a hungry lion to sleep. This was my chance. I was an electrician and had been working on this country club, and pretty soon, the Christmas gala, at which they were being honored for supporting troubled youth programs, was coming up. I knew Jake's routine from Maria, his latest nanny who'd quit after he broke her nose. Josh and Katrina always gave him Ativan before events, triple dose to keep him quiet while they collected their praise. The morning of the gala, I went in early to check some wiring in their prep room. Josh and Katrina were already there, practicing their speech. We had been on great terms ever since I refused to press charges, so they were more than happy to see me. I pretended to be happy too. And then, while Katrina's purse was set down on a chair in the corner, I snuck over to it while they were too distracted. I pretended to look at the socket behind the chair, whilst really I was looking quietly unzipping the purse. Bingo. Inside, I saw Jake's sedatives, 3 white tablets in a little bag, even labeled. I had my own bag with me. White tablets that looked the same, but definitely weren't Ativan. They were Adderall. Stimulants and ODD don't mix well. The switcheroo took seconds, and when I got back up after fixing the socket, I wished them well and headed out to change. By the time the gala started 5 hours later, I was in the audience dressed in the nicest suit with Kaylee next to me. She knew what was going down. And when we looked at Josh and Katrina, who sat at the head table with Jake between them, we were trying not to burst out laughing. Jake looked wrong already. He was twitching and scanning the room like a caged animal, far removed from the sedated boy they expected. Either way, Josh and Katrina were called to the stage soon. Jake was supposed to stay seated. That was the plan. But the Adderall had kicked in hard. He stood up to follow them up, and Katrina tried to guide him back. That's when he pushed her back and ripped away from her. Josh and Katrina exchanged glances, nodding at each other to let Josh stay here and pray he doesn't do anything. Of course, that didn't happen. Josh took the microphone and started speaking. As parents, we understand the challenges. And with that, Jake exploded. "You don't understand anything. You're never home. You don't even like me." Everyone's jaws dropped, and my wife and I were trying our best to hold it in. But the show was only starting. Full story on channel, linked below.